I would say in terms of entrepreneurship, always think about what is the question that I want to answer with my business and what do I feel is different about me? I think sometimes we embark on businesses that we might not actually love. And so Trust Your Magic is all about us thinking about how can I give myself in every moment? And so that's what I would say first off, in terms of business owners, think about what you can give, what's different about you. And then what would you do even if you didn't get paid? Now, of course, we're going to add price points to it, but I do think being able to wake up and being excited about what you do, it helps you in terms of just moving forward and figuring out offerings. What are the things that you can do that you love to do, and then put a price point to it.
You're listening to the Black to Business Podcast, an educational podcast providing Black entrepreneurs with the tools and resources to start and grow their businesses. We chat with vetted Black entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and business owners as they provide tips and resources to help take your business to the next level. I'm your host, Monique T. Marshall. Hey there, Monique here. And before we dive into today's episode, I wanted to share a bit of my journey with you. As a first-generation entrepreneur, I know what it's like to start from scratch. I didn't have a lineage of past business owners or a community of mentors to guide me through the process. That's why I created Black to Business and the Black to Business Podcast, to provide resources and support for fellow Black entrepreneurs like you. And guess what? I'm not alone in this mission. Harvard Business School Executive Education shares our commitment to developing leaders making a difference in the world. Their renowned faculty members are skilled educators blending real-world experience with a variety of teaching approaches to create an exceptional learning environment. Visit hbs.me/explore to discover the possibilities that HBS has to offer. Are you ready to take your leadership to the next level? Visit hbs.me/explore today. Kristen, welcome to the Black to Business Podcast. Such a treat to have you on the show, so welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
I'm excited as well. I'm so excited to hear your story about the amazing work that you are doing. And actually, before we dive in, we always like to get our audience familiar with who we're speaking with. So if you could tell us a little bit about who you are, what is it that you do in your business, and how did you get where you are today?
Sure. Well, my name is Kristen V. Carter, and I'm a television producer, executive producer, and showrunner. And I'm also the founder of Trust Your Magic, which is a lifestyle brand. And through that, I am a speaker, I'm a mentor. I also am a podcaster, and I also sell merchandise. So there's quite a few hats that I have.
Yes, I love that. And I'm so excited about this conversation today because in all the things that you mentioned, I think it's important with the topic that we're going to be talking about, which is what you've been able to do is build without limits and really reach your full potential in business. So I'm excited to dive in. And first, on the Black to Business Podcast, we kind of like to break it down. So for you, you mentioned that you're the founder of Trust Your Magic. And as the founder of Trust Your Magic and Kristen V. Carter Entertainment, could you dive into how you came up with these ideas for these ventures and how they reflect that concept of trusting your magic?
Absolutely. So I started my career in 2006. My first opportunity was as a head writer for an entertainment news show at BET. And so while I was there, I noticed that a lot of people were coming to me to write bios, to write decks for them, one sheets explaining shows and things like that. And I realized, oh man, I think I have a business here outside of what I'm doing as an independent contractor. And so I started my company in 2007. It actually had a different name, but it has morphed into Kristen V. Carter Entertainment. And so at the time I was doing media consultation, which then expanded into television development and production as I continued to grow up the ranks from head writer to executive producer. Now, inside of all of that, so I've been in the business now, if we count my internship years, 22 years. But inside of all of that, you go through a lot of ups and downs in the career, whether you're in entertainment or not. We all go through a lot of ups and downs. And in 2016, I had a dream about wanting to put something together. At the time, it was a stationery brand, but it evolved into Trust Your Magic. I literally had a dream that was reminding me to trust my magic. And I thought that it was to offer that to the world. And so at the time, I started building merchandise. I started building workshops, things like that. but quickly realized, oh, trust your magic is also an affirmation for me as well. So all of my workshops that I've created are built off of things that I've learned through the years. So we talk about negotiation, we talk about interviewing with power, what it means to network with grace, and all of that. And so Trust Your Magic has really been built and birthed off of all of my life experience through Kristen V Carter Entertainment and just my life in general.
I love that. That is so great. And I think that in all of that, so now how would you say, if someone were listening, how would you define trusting your magic?
Yeah, so Trust Your Magic is a philosophy to me. I live by it every day. And it is to remind me and everyone else to trust our gifts and our talents. We already have everything that we need to be everything we're born to be. And so I live by that. So a lot of times when I get asked questions about how to elevate your career, even change some things in your life, I always make sure that we are looking internally before we're looking externally. So Trust Your Magic for me has been so much fun because, like I said, it's a reminder of us trusting what we already have. And so what are the ways that I can offer that to people? So that's how the brand has continued to expand, because I'm always reflecting that myself. Like, how do I trust my magic? How do I connect with people? And I love community. So it's why I do speaking. It's why I do workshops. And even when it comes to my podcast, it's giving friends and colleagues an opportunity to share how they have trusted their magic so that we can continue to inspire and empower each other.
Beautifully said. I love that we already have everything we need within us. And I think that's so important to mention, especially the fact that we are geared towards entrepreneurs who sometimes can struggle with that, feeling like they don't have what they need and they need to look outside to get what they need to excel. So for you, what advice could you give to entrepreneurs who are listening to feel this concept that can have them to trust themselves and know that everything that they have is within them so that they can reach their full potential?
Sure. I would say in terms of entrepreneurship, always think about what is the question that I want to answer with my business and what do I feel is different about me? I think sometimes we embark on businesses that we might not actually love. And so Trust Your Magic is all about us thinking about how can I give myself in every moment? And so that's what I would say first off in terms of business owners. Think about what you can give, what's different about you. And then what would you do even if you didn't get paid? Now, of course, we're going to add price points to it. But I do think being able to wake up and being excited about what you do, it helps you in terms of just moving forward and figuring out offerings. What are the things that you can do that you love to do, and then put a price point to it. So what is the value that I'm giving to people? You know, what is the time factor that I'm giving? That's how I figure out my price points. And even when I have workshops, I talk about that with people. You know, what do you feel is the value? If you feel like it's a strong value, then we're going to, increase the price point. If you feel like you're test running something and trying to, figure things out, then maybe it's a little lower for a little bit and then you grow and build the price point. So I would say in terms of just first steps with entrepreneurs, really think about what is it that you love to do? What's the question that you can answer with your business? Even with my workshops, when I started my workshops, the number one question I always got was, how do I work 12 months out of the year, but I've never been staff on a show? So what that means, a lot of times folks in television can do one of two things. You can be an independent contractor / freelancer. So you change shows. So I work on a show per season. I move to a next show. So I'm an independent contractor. Or you can be staff someplace and you always work under the same umbrella. To me, I've always been a freelancer / independent contractor, but I've had to realize, there's something special about what I'm doing because I work all the time. A lot of times when you think about freelance, sometimes people can think about it as spotty work or you're gigging. I've never looked at my career as gigging. There's been a secret to my sauce that I wasn't even clear about until I kept getting that question. And I said, well, let me back up. What is it that's different? And that's how I ended up building my workshops off of answering that question. So I just wanted to give an example of what I meant in terms of other entrepreneurs answering a question. That's how I was able to build Trust Your Magic.
Beautiful. And now let's go more into your career in entrepreneurship and television production. Now let's talk about the fact that you've been able to build without limits. So for somebody who's listening, how would you define building without limits?
Building without limits means to me being able to build my career with a blank canvas, really throwing things literally on the wall and seeing what sticks. And I think that's what I've been able to do with my career. I think from the moment that I started, there was always a hunger and an energy that I was excited about. And I'd say 22 years later, I'm still excited. I'm still passionate. And so that blank canvas is what helps me build and what helps me, move without limits.
Love that. And so for somebody who's listening, you gave an excellent tip about, trusting our magic. And for somebody who's listening, how do they embody that principle of building without limits if they don't have it?
I think it's important to mirror what it is that you want to experience or mirror what it is that you see that inspires you. So, for example, I started my career and then the recession hit. So the recession hit in 2009. It was the very first time that I was out of work. All my mentors were out of work, and I really had to create from a blank canvas at that time. And so I started reading certain books. I read Marianne Williamson's book, A Return to Love. I read The Four Agreements. I read a lot of books that are in what's known as the metaphysical space, which is really the spiritual space, and figuring out how to rebuild when there's nothing in front of me that I can lean on and point to. I also started watching a lot of documentaries. It's interesting. My friends, they laugh at me because I watch Michael Jackson clips every day. And not just because Michael is amazing and the music is amazing and he's been a part of our lives for so long, but he's literally the greatest musician of all time, in my opinion, at least. I know there's lots of greats, but undisputably, Michael still holds the record with Thriller being the best-selling album. But how was he able to achieve that? So if you listen to his inspirations and how he wrote down his goals and he literally spoke into the mirror about what he was going to do, those things inspire me. Watching Kobe Bryant's documentary about his fortitude and how he has pushed forward, those things have helped me build my canvas. So when I'm looking at greats and thinking about, what are the ways that they were able to do things? Maybe there's something I can apply. So for those out there that are listening to me, I would say the same thing. It's a science to a certain degree in terms of negotiations and putting together price points. But when it comes to the passion and the drive and the love and what's going to keep you building business when no one else is doing what you're doing, it's really pulling that inspiration forward.
Yes, I love it. And it's so funny because yesterday I was listening to A Man in the Mirror. So I'm like, oh my word. It's true. So deep, so deep. I love that.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely going to put those books in the show notes as well. So thank you for sharing.
Sure, absolutely. Even, we watched Usher on the Super Bowl. He's been doing this for 30 years.
Yeah.
When I think about the very first concert of his I went to, or even his first album that didn't do well, his second album, My Way, is the one that ended up putting him on the map. It takes time. And I think too many of us throw in the towel too early. You got to put the work in. And so when you put the work in and you study your landscape, you study, okay, what are the other price points out here? What can I show for my value? You gotta really pay attention to that. Am I giving a service that's undeniable? For me, I feel like I'm one of few in our, I would say, African American space that's doing this with Trust Your Magic. I love talking about us using our gifts. It's the number one thing that I love. But the people that I see in the landscape are Marie Forleo and Danielle Laporte, which are women who are not of color.
Yeah.
They've had the opportunity to really grow in this space. I want to show that us as Black people are moving forward in our gifts and our talents boldly. And I'm really excited about continuing this. There's so many other things that I have in my mind's eye for Trust Your Magic. I'm grateful for where I am now, but there's so much more that I want to offer everyone.
I love it. And I felt it. And Kristen, I'm so glad you mentioned that about Usher because I'm a comment reader. I did not watch the Super Bowl, but I just was reading. And so one of the things I saw someone mention is exactly what you said. Like he's been able to stay consistent, visibly consistent. And they were like, it needs to be studied, especially at his age, quote unquote. But it's something that needs to be studied. And then also I was seeing that I forget the artist's name, but she just like I just found the "Oh My Mama" song.
Oh, Victoria Monet.
Yes,
Yes,
her.
she has been 15 years to become one of the
Yes.
overnight success. I've been following her for quite some time.
That is amazing. And I saw that yesterday and I'm like, wow, we need to talk about these types of stories more, because when you look online, it looks like everybody's having it happen so fast. And that's not what's happening. So I love the work that you're doing and what you said. But I also want to stay there a little moment and talk to those people who are feeling like they know that they have this thing within them, but it's taking longer than they feel like it should be taking. And so what advice do you have for that person who's feeling like that?
I would say go back to the drawing board. So what I find is that a lot of people who are in entrepreneurship, they may offer quite a few things, but haven't really articulated what their specialty is. So for me, in terms of creating Kristen V. Carter Entertainment, sure, I'm a showrunner and executive producer now, but my bread and butter for so long has been writing. I started out as a writer. And so I can offer all of these things in production, but when we get down to it, it's really writing and my love of storytelling that's been able to propel my career. And so I think a lot of people get out here and they go, I can do 4 or 5 things, or they're very general and not specific. And so if you can get specific about what is the offer I can really fine tune, what is something that I can do that will really help me birth these other areas of my business. I think it's really being honest. Not enough of us are honest about what we're doing, how we're translating, how we're communicating ourselves. If I speak to you and you're confused, that's an opportunity for me. That's feedback for me to take a look at, okay, how am I expressing or explaining what I'm doing? You know, so it's why I wanted to break down the fact that I have 2 businesses, and this one business inspired this second business, but it's all me, you know, like every single thing that I do are aspects of me. And so I think for folks at home, if we could first narrow down what is it that is my specialty, and then how can you build from there?
That's good. Good advice. Solid. Love that. Thank you. And speaking of specialty, like you mentioned, you've always loved writing and storytelling. I want to talk about a recent project that you've worked on, which is Gospel Live with, with Henry Louis Gates Jr. I want to talk about that, recently launched on PBS as well. Can you talk about what that concept was and the execution and even your role in that?
In terms of Gospel Live, presented by Henry Louis Gates Jr., so I was called by a particular production company in June of 2023. Basically, Henry Louis Gates had created a 4-part documentary series called Gospel, and he wanted a companion special that would celebrate gospel music. And so I was brought on to develop the concert special, showrun and executive produce it, and it's been such a delight because it gave me an opportunity to celebrate gospel, bring together R&B and gospel greats. So we have Erica Campbell, John Legend, Molly Music, Latasha from Escape.
Wow.
Anthony Hamilton, just so many different amazing people coming together to celebrate and salute the songs that inspired their careers. So they're not singing songs that are in their usual catalog. They're singing songs that inspired them to get into the business. That's number one. And then number two, it gives us an opportunity to celebrate the past, present, and future of gospel music. So we have clips of our artists talking about their favorite artists growing up, you know, what it was like growing up in the Black church, you know, how they were able to blend music and spirituality, just a lot of really great things that I'm really excited about for this show.
That is so beautiful. It sounds exciting. I definitely have to check it out. I'm so excited to share that also because it speaks to the work that you're doing and the very exact thing we're talking about today. So for you, looking back on that project and the other projects that you've been able to work on, how do you feel that this exemplifies trusting your magic and also pushing boundaries?
I feel that Gospel Live is one of my proudest projects to date. I've worked on many shows, but this one brought together so many things that I love personally and professionally. And when it comes to trusting my magic, I really trusted my instinct with this show. So when I was brought on, honestly, even though I've worked in the music entertainment and music programming space, I've also show ran. This was my first time show running a concert special. So I had served in all the other positions, but I was really excited about show running and EPing this one because this was my debut in this space, basically, for this title. And so when it came time for me to select my team, I really wanted some powerhouse folks that I felt like could get the job done, but also really had stake in gospel and were excited about sharing their spirituality, quite honestly. And so I thought about who would be really good from a production standpoint, but who would also get the mission of us celebrating gospel in this really interesting and unique space. So I called upon a lot of people that I had worked with through the years. My executive in charge of production, her name is Roz Sandifer. She started out at BET with me. We were cube mates together years ago. So for us to come together and be the heads, I was the creative head and she was logistical. She was our logistical head, was just so amazing to me. Also, I was able to hire a lot of people because we were the only show that I knew up in production during the strike. So for those of you listening who are not in Hollywood, last year we took a big hit, the scripted side and the film side. It was several months where our colleagues were not working, but if you're on the nonfiction side, we could still work. So a lot of my friends who had transitioned to scripted moved back over to my show to work with us. So I was able to work with some folks I deeply, deeply respect. And also I was able to have my pastor serve as a consulting producer. His name is Aaron Lindsay, and he is a Grammy Award-winning musician producer. And he also just started a church in 2023, excuse me. So it was the best of both worlds of being able to have a liaison that I could talk to say, hey, does this format work? Not just for production, but for people who are in gospel. Right. I wanted to make sure that I represented everybody well. And so having him as a listening ear and a sounding board was so amazing. So I'm using all of these touch points to explain how I trusted my magic. So I wanted to be very specific about the intentionality around this show and using my intuition. Sometimes you get on shows and you're not able to hire everybody you want to hire, or you're not able to, creatively do the things that you want to do. And I'm really proud of this show because when you watch it, you'll feel the love. I'm so proud. It premiered on February 9th. And I'm so proud because it's not just about singing songs. It's not just about saying, oh, I grew up in the church. You feel the spirit, you feel the love, you feel the passion. And that's from all the hard work and also using my instinct and my intuition on a lot of decisions to make the show what it is.
Beautiful. Impactful work. Love that. And so let's talk about balance. So your entrepreneurship and production. So how do you balance and manage these things? Because having this thing that is impactful and wanting to help people. I know a lot of people also can struggle with, how do I balance multiple things, although I am focused on this one mission?
Balance takes time. I would say for anyone listening, give yourself grace because it is ever evolving. So when I first started in the business as a head writer, I was one of those writers that would sometimes stay up all night because I would get an inspiration late at night, or I knew I had a deadline. Even though I was on one show, The Black Carpet, the entertainment news show that I referred to, I was also a speech writer for Deborah Lee, who was BET's former CEO, and also a lot of other executives. I was also writing a lot of other music specials like the Top 25 Countdown. So in order to do all of that, I pulled really long hours. So no one really knew when I was writing or working, but I was doing that overnight. I would say now that I have earned my keep, so to speak, I pretty much shut off somewhere. I'm saying that I'm like thinking about it because I tell people, I shut off around like 8, but I'm still firing off a lot of emails. So I give myself an early evening is somewhere between, I'll say 6 and 9. So I don't work overnight. I'm an early riser. And so for me, that's balance. I would say I also love to bike ride and exercise and do game nights with friends. I'm very intentional about making sure that I have that space and I carve out that space. It's not just, whenever I get to it, it's very intentional. Like, okay, if I work late this one night, then I'm not working late the next one.
Right.
Or if I get up early one morning, okay, then I'm not going to do it that next morning. Obviously, if there's a big project, so for example, we had, a huge promotional tour for Gospel Live, we were up very early or up late because we were driving to something. So that makes sense. But just for every day, no, I'm definitely clocking out in the evening. And so that balance has been a journey, has been a real journey, but you get there. And I think just allow yourself grace, but also say like, what fills my cup? What can I do to honor myself? And those kind of questions will help people figure out like how they can carve out time for themselves.
That's good. Yeah, I feel that like clocking out. I'm with you on that. And one of the things I love that you said is about, earning your keep. So you've accomplished a lot. You've done a lot. For you, how do you maintain a growth mindset in all of this and say, I'm still going to keep going? Because I could just relax here. I could chill out here. But how do you keep going?
I love that question because I really love expanding. So I'm always looking for ways to grow and elevate and challenge myself because it's fun. I get the opportunity to do television. Not everyone gets a chance to say that. And so I'm really honored by that and want to always grow. And so with Gospel Live, I knew that the show was really special. When we shot the show, we had a nearly flawless night, which is so rare in production. And post-production was so impactful. All of the spirit and energy that we had in the show, it translated in the edit. And so I said to myself, how do we get this to more audiences? So your production company and your network has a national promotional plan, but I wanted to also insert a regional promotional plan, which meant going door to door to churches. I wanted to do a screening church tour. And so I reached out to PBS and they loved the idea. They were really excited about it. But we didn't quite have the resources to make it work so soon because I was pitching that during the winter break for us to really gear up for January. So the resources weren't quite there. And so I said, well, do I have your blessing to do this myself? And so everyone said yes. And so for January and February, my mission was to get everybody to watch Gospel Live. So that meant doing a regional church tour. Thus far, we have gone to 3 different churches all across the country, to Maryland, New Jersey, and New York. And we have a second leg of this tour that's coming up for the remainder of the month. And so that's an example of a way that I have elevated. Showrunners don't typically go to networks and production companies and say, hey, I want to submit a publicity plan. Like what? That just never really happens.
Right.
And so for me, though, I said, I really want everyone to see this show. What are the ways that I can continue to give? What are the ways that I can also continue to learn? Because I don't do PR all the time, but I figured and I felt very strongly about speaking about our experience, bringing panelists together who are gospel luminaries, but also key members of our team to show and talk about our experience because we knew it was special. We knew that it brought so many things personally, professionally that we love, especially in a landscape that, is a little gloom and doom. We're just coming out of COVID. We're just coming out of the strike. There's so many things going on in the world. And so for us to shine a light on a positive show like this, I wanted to do everything possible. So how I keep growing is just keep coming up with new ideas and figuring out ways to execute.
Love it. Love that. And so one of the things you also mentioned, kind of touched on earlier, is like knowing your worth and pricing. So I want to talk about negotiation and that playing a role in that self-actualization and professional success. So for you, how do you feel that negotiation plays this role?
Absolutely. I love negotiating because it is not about the dollar amount. It is all about value, how you're stating your value and how the person or the company that you are communicating with sees your value as well. And so for me, getting started, when you start out, you're just learning. So I'm not expecting anybody out the gate to, state this price point, but you learn through doing. And so I knew early on, based on feedback, okay, I am a solid writer. I hit deadlines extremely well. I'm a good communicator. So again, I talked about how I started Kristen V Entertainment was off of people coming to me for bios and decks and different writing. And so I thought, okay, initially, what can I charge for my value? I'm turning this over really quickly. I did some research when it came to other people who were doing bios and things like that and decks, what is sort of market value? And at the time, because I was super young, I did price myself just a little under so that more people would come to me faster. I wanted to build my clientele that way. And then as I continued to grow, that's when my price points started to change and started to elevate, because I knew at that point, one, I had developed a client base that was really strong. My word of mouth was really strong. My turnover, like I have a very high success rate, and also people were happy. So my price points really did shift as I continued to grow. I would say now when I speak to clients, when I do workshops and I talk about the art of negotiation, I always talk about three things. When you get an offer, you can either confirm, deny, or counter offer. So, even, for example, when it comes to us, even booking this interview, initially we had a different time. We both locked in and said, yes, I needed to come back to you and counter and say, hey, I actually need a different time. Can we do this other time? And then you accepted that time. Now we could have, done the scheduled do-si-do. That's an example of counter offering. Right. And then finally you land on something. So we negotiate every single day about time, we negotiate with ourselves every day. What am I going to wear? And, do I change this? We negotiate every single day, but it is accepting, declining, or counter offering, those three things. And you always have a choice. And so sometimes when you get into a room, you can tell how someone values you based on where they start. So sometimes you can sit somewhere and go, okay, is it worth it for me to counter? I already can see where they're starting from. And if my threshold is way higher, you can state, here's what it would take to have me and do the dance. But sometimes it's not worth it. But sometimes it is, depending upon, how you value the opportunity. I would say on another side, sometimes people will ask you to start out. So I would say start out where you feel your value, where you're valued at some place where you're honoring your time, you're honoring your deliverables, and then add a little tax and then see where it goes. So someone may counter and bring you back down just slightly. And then you can decide if you're going to lock in or keep moving. So hopefully all of that is helpful. I tried to pack in quite a bit.
Yeah, no, it's very helpful.
Yeah, I absolutely love, because that's where people get tripped up the most. Yeah. Like folks will say, oh, let's work together. And then it's time to really work together. And folks are nervous about saying what it is, but you have to be comfortable with stating your worth. And if it can seem like someone is quote unquote playing you. Sometimes people just really don't have the resources, but if they are good people and good business people, they'll simply say, hey, I actually don't have the budget. What can we do? And then you can figure out how to adjust. So maybe you're doing something part-time. Maybe you all are doing a trial run for 2 or 3 weeks. And then that person will figure it out. They'll either dig deeper in their pockets or, you'll keep with that truncated workflow. So it really, every situation looks different. And I'm happy if you have any other follow-ups to that, I'm happy to answer, because there's a lot to pack in there.
Yeah, I love that. I love that answer. And I love those examples, because I think oftentimes people think that if it doesn't go this way, it's a no. And there are no other options. So giving the strategies, giving the tips on there are several options, and actually having a discussion, because some people can't think for you oftentimes too. So I love those examples.
Yeah, I think it's really important for us to feel empowered. Because again, negotiating is not really about the money. It's about how you value yourself. Yeah. And also, can you meet that value? So 2 things happen. I know a lot of people who undersell, but I also know a lot of people that over, how you like overpromise and underdeliver. You don't want to do that. Yeah. And so it's, again, we talked about this earlier in the conversation, really being honest with ourselves. Like, are you ready when it comes to expanding? The reason that I feel that Kristen V Carter Entertainment and Trust Your Magic have good reputations have to do with the fact that I deliver. Now, if if I'm promising all of this and you guys listen to me and I'm not that, then we're at a mismatch, then there's something for me to look at. But I want people to know, like, really check yourself. You don't have to have someone else check you. I love what I do and I love what I stand for. So I am Trust Your Magic. Like, I trust my magic every day. We're on this promo tour. I'm trusting my magic and figuring out, what other offerings I'm going to do. Hold on, there's sirens here. I'm so mad at these sirens.
I almost want to keep this party.
Shout out to my hometown of North New Jersey. My publicist and I are traveling around the country right now. And my mom she's like, Kristen, these sirens are always going. So again, forgive me. If you want to keep that in, you are more than welcome.
I definitely do.
But I would say that it is really an opportunity for us to look in the mirror. When you're building your business, you've got to think about two things: an avatar, which is who are your ideal clients, but also like, who are you and what do you stand for? So I can't be on this podcast and talk about values, and then I talk to somebody that calls me from this podcast and I'm not together. That's a mismatch. So you got to be really clear about what you're offering, what you stand for. And if you can't meet the moment, you say, hey, I misspoke. We need to renegotiate and here's what I can do. But if you are not returning emails, or, I know of sometimes people literally take money and then the business is not good. No. So if y'all want to build business, if I want to continue to build my business, I have to be everything that I say I am. And also be honest and willing to shift if I can't meet those markers. And that's really, really important in business as well.
Kristen, that is so good. I want to stay there because before you even went into that, I'm like, when you're talking, I'm thinking the reputation. And I really want to talk more about the power of reputation, because I think that people don't understand the impact of their reputation, even if my next questions are going into community and network, but even if it's not you directly that someone is working with, or, me, but knowing somebody who's saying like, oh my God, that service was horrible, but the power of really protecting your reputation. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
I think protecting your reputation is all about staying true to your word. I feel like if you give good service and you make people feel good, they will naturally be your calling card without you having to do anything. But if you've given someone a really bad experience, nowadays we will just go on social media and tear you up.
Yes.
So I think it's really important to identify how we make people feel in every transaction and every interaction, because a lot of times you don't even know that you're building business by being yourself. By being friendly, by answering emails, by taking the call and even when you're busy, those kinds of things, being honest when you can set deadlines and maybe when you need to push something, all of those things really, really matter. It's very rare. I can't say that I've had anyone speak out of turn, to be honest with you, but a lot of that is building community. So a lot of times we talk about networking. I stray away from that word and I talk about building community. So I stay in touch with people no matter what's going on. I think the reason that I do work 12 months out of the year has a lot to do. Sure, I think I'm great at what I do, but I think it's because I love community. So I stay in touch with people. I don't have to ask for a job or anything like that. I actually can't stand when people just reach out to me when they're looking for something, because that means you don't really value our relationship. You value what I can do for you, which is two different things. And so I really try to make sure that people know that I value them and that I respect them, that we see each other as people. So when folks have birthdays, or maybe when they have a parent who is ill, I will reach out. And that's just because I love people. So that has really worked for me in terms of business, because folks like working with people that they like.
Yep.
Like, honestly, when you think, even when you think about media, when folks get canceled, it has a lot to do with something that they did personally. It's not even something that they've done professionally necessarily, but that likability factor is really important. And I think in order to protect your reputation, I just think you got to be a good person. Like at the end of the day, you just have to be a good person.
Yes, I agree. I definitely agree with that. And also, like, for people who are listening, who are trying to build community, what advice would you give to them on ways to do so when it comes to building it in business?
In terms of building community, I would say two things. One, when you're first starting out with your business, let your community know what you're up to and the types of services that you have, but also what you stand for from a value perspective. So every company has a different value system, and that could be love, respect, that could be a lot of different things, but two people can have the same type of business, but their values be totally different. So I think it's important to make sure that your values are very clear when you're starting out and you're speaking to people that you know and love. And then as you continue, you're building outside of your community. You're building with folks that you don't necessarily know personally, still making sure that folks know your values, what you bring to the table, why you're different, and then keeping in touch with people, letting them know how you've expanded. So, for me through the years, and this has been really natural. So again, for anyone that's listening, sometimes you need to really think about, what are your strengths in terms of communicating? Sometimes people are better with verbal. Sometimes people are better with email or newsletters or whatever the case may be. I think for me, even though I love interfacing, I've also really done, I think, a good job of keeping in touch via email. So folks have been able to track my progress, not only as a person and as an individual, but also as a business owner, because as I've continued to grow, I continue to share. So I would just say in terms of building business and building community, it's all about connecting with people, letting folks know about your values, letting folks know about your offerings, but then also making sure that you're creating things that show that you care about them, that you care about them as consumers, that you care about them about people. And I think with that, you'll always win. You'll always figure it out. If you're beta testing something, you can tell what people are into, like based on literally like based on how they respond. I would say another big thing would be creating focus groups. So sometimes you literally, if you're about to build something with a business, you invite 15 people who you believe are influencers in whatever space. You invite them. That always is really good because people then see, oh, this person values my opinion. Yeah. Let me make sure that I am talking for them. So there's different ways for you to figure out how to encourage people and inspire people to support you, but also because you are supporting them and also because you see them. So making sure that it is a mutual exchange. I feel like those are things that help build community for sure.
I love that. I definitely love that idea too. And so would you say that those are also some ways, or even some ways, that people can nurture these connections that they do have, or the community?
Absolutely. I think those things you can definitely draw on to build your community and strengthen your community. I think that people innately want to support one another. You know, we live in a world where folks talk about haters and this, that, and the third. And I can't necessarily say, I can't speak to that. What I can speak to is the fact that people have continued to see me grow and continue to champion that. And I would also say that when I'm talking about trusting my magic and trusting your magic, I'm also hoping that what people see in me, they can see in themselves. So sure, I've continued to grow. My hope is that you are also growing as well. Let's grow together. And so with that in mind, I think that is what has kept people supportive of my businesses, because I'm always like, how can we do this together? How can we make sure that we're uplifting your business? What are some ways maybe you can, be a sponsor or a vendor or whatever the case may be? I'm always looking for ways to champion other folks as well. And people remember that not only from a personal standpoint, but also a business standpoint as well.
That's so beautiful. This has been amazing, Kristen. And I think I want to end it off by talking about, for our listeners who are very inspired, I know I am, by the insights that you shared and the steps. So what are some actionable steps that people can take away from this conversation today to begin to trust their magic if they were doubting themselves and unlocking their potential in both a personal and a professional realm?
I would say for anyone listening to take inventory on what you love about yourself. I think that those things are really important to nail down. And even if it's something as simple, so if you're having difficulty with that, is it your smile? Do you love the way you laugh? Do you love the way that you write? Anything, it can be absolutely anything. And those things, taking that kind of inventory will help you identify, well, how can I make sure that I'm always smiling in business? You know, what are the ways that I can make sure that I am fortifying my writing? How can I make sure that I'm sharing that with other people? Those things could seem very small, but they are very big in terms of making sure that you can understand what is special about you. What value do you bring that you know you bring? Not just because someone else is saying it, but you love this aspect of you. How can you move that forward? So I would say that's one for personal. But I would say in terms of just building, really, I can't say it enough. Think about what you love to do. What do you love? What makes your heart sing? What is it that you can identify that you think is different about what you would offer than anyone else? And then, you know, how are you going to spend time really creating a vision around it and an execution around it? And how can you share that with other people? So those would be the first things. But I'm really excited. I would love to hear if anybody starts a business or expands a business based off of this conversation. I love to stay in touch with people and would love to do so here. This has been such a beautiful conversation, but it starts with these moments. I hope that someone is sparked by this conversation, because I know the conversations that sparked me when I was 17, when I was 22, when at 17 was when I was starting to work in television. 22 was when I started Kristen V Entertainment. I would say 28 is when I started Trust Your Magic, but it just started really evolving. Like I Trust Your Magic now, and I'm, a little bit more senior at this point, but I would say in terms of the first time I thought about Trust Your Magic to now, so much has grown because I've grown as a person. Yeah. And so I think just really being able to pull, like, what do you love? Like, that's why I think Trust Your Magic really works, because I love community. I love sharing. I love reminding ourselves that we have everything we need. So I hope those tips really help.
Yes, let me tell you, you've given us a lot of great tips and things that people could actually use. And I think the beautiful thing about this conversation is that you don't make it seem overwhelming or impossible, and just practical ways that people can really get started. Because I'm sure a lot of people are dealing with these things and just they need that guidance. So you've definitely provided that today.
I appreciate that. And one thing I wanted to mention was that during the COVID years, when COVID first started, I jumped on Facebook really quickly and started a show, because this is just how I am. I'm always like, how can I be the answer? How can I be the solution? And so I knew that as soon as COVID started, everybody was shocked and afraid about their finances. I didn't know what was going to happen. And that ended up honestly being my busiest year, to be honest with you. But when I got on Facebook, I kept asking people, what do you love to do that you could put a price point to? If you love to cook, you better start serving meals around your community, because if we can't go, with a mask on, of course, but if we can't go out to dinners and things like that, what are the ways that you can keep maybe the elderly, moving about? Can you walk dogs? Can you drive around? And sure, to some people, these seem like small things, but if you love to do it and no one else is doing it, people trust you. You are, you have procedures and safety precautions and all of that. You can figure out a way to make money when you lose your job. So I often encourage people to really think outside the box, because folks really think a lot about 9 to 5s. I'm like, no. Yeah. What is the business we can build? What is the business that we can build? What do you love to do? What is innate for you? And put that together. If you love quilts, baby, you better be making quilts and keep people warm. Something, right. You know what I mean? You really think outside the box. Yeah. And so I just beg people to really think about that and be strategic. Think about your value, what you bring, because that will end up catapulting you into a whole nother stratosphere that maybe you weren't even thinking of before.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And okay, so somebody who is listening, I know they're going to want to continue this conversation. So if someone wants to explore Trust Your Magic further after this podcast, which I'm sure they will, what are some of the resources or offerings that you can recommend them for them to get started?
Sure. So I would say in terms of staying connected, please feel free to reach out to me on Instagram or Facebook. Instagram is Kristen V Carter, which is Kristen. V as in Victoria, Carter. You can find me on Instagram or Facebook. My website is also the same, KristenVCarter.com. And Trust Your Magic is also available on YouTube, Spotify, and iTunes. And so each of our episodes for the podcast feature people that have trusted their magic, who have taken leaps of faith. We talk about how they've trusted their magic. And so hopefully that will continue to inspire people as well.
Love it. And Kristen, any tools or resources that you would love to share with my audience that have helped you in your entrepreneurial journey?
That's a great question. I shared the books that helped. And the funny thing, when people go back to them, they're going to be like, well, these weren't business books, because a lot of it is mindset. So to me, I care a lot about shifting our mindsets and shifting our perspective. So again, I mentioned the 4 Agreements. The Alchemist was a life-changing book for me. A Return to Love by Marianne Williamson. Those 3 books really did it for me. From a business perspective, I took Marie Forleo's B School, which I learned 2 things, because when sometimes you get into these virtual classes and you pay in full, and you do that, they do that purposely, because whether you finish or not, they've made their money. And so that taught me something, even from my business perspective, in terms of certain offerings that I have. Yes, I want you to grow and to continue. But if you bow out for any reason, that is not, I'm here. I'm here to teach you. I'm here to give you all the tools. But that still doesn't mean that, like, you know, you paid half or you paid 25%, you paid in full. So you get to step in or step out of the experience as you see fit. So me being a part of B School, which I didn't finish, but still, I still have access to all the tools. I still registered all of those things. All the examples that she showed in that B School were amazing. But the number one thing I got out of it was, oh man, she made her money whether I finished or not. Right. I'm going to use that.
Yeah. That
true. Was very valuable. If that's the one thing I needed to learn, I learned it.
That is true. She got hers off the top. Yes. Okay. So, and my final question is, what does it mean to you to be Black in business?
Oh man, it means everything for me to be Black in business. I am so honored that I have the opportunity to be an entrepreneur. To be young, gifted, and Black is something that I honor every day. I don't take it for granted. I think that we have so many ancestors and so many people who have come before us that fought for these opportunities for us. So it behooved me to honor them and honor myself by continuing to be Black in business, to continue to be inspired, to challenge myself, to challenge others, to have mentees, to be a mentor, to serve, to give, to be in the community in a bold way. So I am just so grateful to be Black in business.
Love it. Kristen, thank you so much for being on the Black to Business podcast. This has been a real treat. And thank you so much for pouring into our audience and just being you. So thank you again. And we appreciate everything that you're doing.
Thank you. I have really enjoyed this conversation. I would love to stay in touch with you and with anyone who is listening. If anyone has any questions, please do not hesitate, because we need each other, and it all starts here. And I'm hoping that this will support someone else who's Black in business to go and dream higher, do big things, do great things, and really inspire the next as well.
Certainly.
And there you have it, another banking episode. So as we wrap up today's episode, I want to remind you of a quote by Maya Angelou, which is, "You may encounter many defeats, but you must not be defeated." Kristen's insights today were a testament to that resilience. From trusting your magic to negotiating with confidence, we've learned invaluable lessons that can propel our entrepreneurial journeys forward. Remember, your dreams are worth pursuing, and the only limits that exist are the ones we impose on ourselves. So let's continue to push beyond those boundaries and build the futures that we envision. For more information about Kristen and additional resources mentioned in today's episode, visit blacktobusiness.com/187. A big thanks to you for being a part of the Black to Business family, and together we are shaping the future of Black entrepreneurship. Keep striving, keep growing, and I'll catch you next week for another episode. Until then, stay resilient, stay ambitious, and keep building without limits. Take care.